All right, hello. We are Colin, Yotam, and Ulash, and today we're presenting how we attempted to create a brain-computer interface training different machine learning algorithms on EEG data in the NeuroLab. So, our initial inspiration was we wanted to read Ulash's mind, and to do that, we needed to create a brain-computer interface using machine learning model to interpret the EEG data. This required collecting our own data, choosing a machine learning model, training it, and evaluating its results.
To answer the question of whether we can train a machine learning model to predict hand movements simply based off of brain waves, due to its relevance to building a BCI or a brain-computer interface, we had to record a large amount of brain activation data for hand movements. We used an X-on EEG device, that thing, to record Ulash's brain response to roughly 30 minutes of arm movements as directed by slides. We recorded the exchange of these slides so that we could sync up the labels with the EEG data later on.
Here you can see more of the experimental setup as well as the machine that we used. So on the left, you can see how I'm using ionized water to clean and to kind of make sure that the sponges are conducting electricity, and I'm attaching the sponges to the headset. And to the right, you can see the headset being placed on my head, and that headset has 7 different nodes that are attached to my scalp that conduct electricity, like the electrical signals that my brain emits. And in the middle, you can see how each different node collects information in a sinusoidal wave format, and that's the data that we gathered. Let's play a video. This is how we gathered our data. So I was shown right, left, or none, and I'm consecutively, respectively moving my right hand because I'm being shown right, and my headset is gathering the data, and it's collecting none, the data labeled none at the moment. We can move on, and this is collecting the left, but this is another video showcasing. So we have slides and we have a video in the slide. So I'm moving my left hand and collecting my brain waves responding respectively to my left hand, and it's gonna switch to right in a bit. Yeah, and then right now I'm moving my right hand. So this is significant because in neurology, in neuroscience, if you're moving your left hand, we expect that your right brain activates more. And if you're moving your right hand, we expect that your left brain activates more. And we can look and analyze the signals that we receive through specific electrodes that we have on the EEG data set. And that's what we are using and taking as our assumption while training our data further on.
So the first thing we had to do the data pre-processing was watch the video back and record all the points in time from the start that the label changed. As we mentioned, we recorded a video. So essentially we timestamped every time there was a new label on the slide. And then from there, we had to also come up with or find a way to process the raw EEG data that came from the headset, and that comes in a VHDR file, which is the common EEG data file along with some other metadata, and we had to convert it into a way that we can kind of sync everything up and train a model with. So from here, we had to learn a library, Python neuroscience library called MNE, which was helpful for that. And then now that the 2 data streams were accessible to work with, we had our kind of Excel timestamps of label changing, and we also had kind of accessible EEG data by using the MNE library. We had to kind of bring everything together. So the first thing we had to do was we had to sync up the time periods, which was pretty simple because we were smart about recording it and kind of time-stamped exactly when in the video everything started. As you saw in the previous slides, we recorded a video so that we can monitor exactly when everything started and everything stopped. And so from there, we had to join the EEG node data or the feature data, which are continuous values or a time series, together with the labels that are discrete, non-uniformly spaced data, because those are just, timestamps every time the label changes. And we had to change that, bring that all together into discrete uniform examples. And so to do that, we built a sort of tiling algorithm that takes in an interval size as an input, and that can be variable. And it creates our examples by finding the average feature time series value over that interval that's set. And then it takes the corresponding label for that point in time. And so that let us kind of experiment with different period sizes, or kind of interval sizes of our data. And then by using EEG data sampling benchmarks, we determined 1 second intervals would be the most optimal for providing a variety of example, with an okay sample rate as well, which yielded us with around 1,600 usable examples.
All right, so what did our final data set actually end up looking like? And what we ended up was sort of 2 versions of our label set of our data set. One of them with 3 labels, and that included left, right, or neither hand being moved. And one of them just contained 2 labels, and that is just left or right. And we had about 1,600 labeled examples representing this information with 9 features per example. And here's an example of what an example of that from a data set might have looked like. Or I guess what the whole data set looks like. What you're looking at here, each cluster of dots represents all of our training examples represented by one feature with respect to another feature. So you're seeing the relationship between 2 features, and what you'll see is that there's a lot of overlap, so it's very hard to pick where one color starts and another one ends, and so it's very hard to pick apart moving your left hand, moving your right hand, or moving neither hand. Although, as you'll see on the top right here, there are certainly some instances where you can really pick them apart, and that's what we're hoping our machine learning model will be able to do. All right, part of the images didn't load in this slide, so that's broken, but we're going to proceed nonetheless. We tried a number of machine learning models, and we wanted to see which one worked best, and that's the one that we would end up using for our final project. So here we have all the attempts we had ranked from worst to best, starting from perceptron, then we tried a KNN, then we tried a number of different combinations of convolutional and neural networks, convolutional neural networks and regular neural networks. And what we ended up finding was that we got our best results with a 1-layer convolutional neural network with 1-layer neural network with 64 nodes, and just choosing between 2 labels. So choosing between left arm and right arm moving rather than left arm, right arm, and neither arm.
Just quickly adding on to the previous slide, we also use recurrent neural networks with long short-term memory neurons, and it didn't perform very well, so it would be like placed somewhere higher up in the category. We forgot to add it, but yeah, going to the slide. So we used various techniques to optimize both our model as well as our data after we had our models going on. One thing that we used definitely was removing outliers. So we use Z-score. Z-score is essentially how many standard deviations each feature value is away from the mean. And we removed all of the data entries that were more than 3 standard deviations away from the mean. And we experimented with different convolutional layer kernels, 3 to 1. And a convolutional layer kernel is essentially a convolutional filter, which is a small matrix that's used for extracting feature for the next layer. And we experimented with a couple different layers for convolutional layers as well as dense layers. The optimizer we used is Adam Optimizer. And so we had various different values for how many neurons per layer in dense neural layers, spanning 10, 32, and 64. And we used the cross-validation sets so that we would prevent overfitting as well as just have more rigor in our test sets. And we used 10 epochs and 32 batches. And our best result consisted of one layer of convolutional neural networks with kernel set to 3, and one layer of dense neural networks with 64 nodes. It classified between 2 different labels, either left or right hand movement, and the accuracy we got in our test result was 73%, and the accuracy at the training result was 75.
So the lab streaming layer is an interface for interacting with the monitored EEG data in real time. The final goal of this project was to build a BCI. Super exciting stuff there. And so up to this point, we've basically described everything necessary to effectively make live predictions on Olaj's brainwaves. The only thing that's really left to do was actually implementing these live predictions. The first step is obtaining the live data. So that took some research actually in communication with the support team for the specific EEG device that we're using, on how and when exactly the EEG streams its data. So based on kind of their input, we were able to find the appropriate tool, PyLSL, which can pick up LSL streams on the network. So we wrote code to pre-process the examples as they're being picked up in real time, where they're pushed into a classify function the second they're streamed onto the Python file. And so that is kind of modular. You can change the classify function. Basically, the pre-processing stuff that we built just changes the stream into kind of an example data. And so our plan was to build kind of a pathway, as you can see on the screen, that first we would kind of employ a simple model that basically looks whether it's nothing or left or right. And that's just kind of changing the labels in the data frame. And then after that, pushing it into our most effective left-right classification function that we just discussed. And so that way you kind of have a threshold before the predictions are actually being made. And then the classifications only come out once the first model predicts there to be an actual movement. Unfortunately, we weren't able to test on the live EEG data despite the framework and the code all being there. It was actually a grueling process where no combination of computer, operating system, broadcasting device, receiving program or library, we tried several, and network was able to get the data broadcasted despite several back and forths with the support team in Europe. It was quite frustrating, and we put several days and many hours of work into this step because we're so excited about it with no avail. We are still hoping to resolve the issue after some further back and forth because all the hard work is already there. For the BCI to work, it's just dependent on kind of how we can find a working solution and get the data over the network, and then we can really witness the satisfying results of our hard work.
All right, so just to wrap things up, in a conclusion, did we get our ultimate goal of a working brain-computer interface? Not quite. However, we did end up making a model that, honestly, given the task, performed pretty well. We got 73% accuracy on predicting hand motion through brain waves. So that's something we're all pretty excited about. And we're also excited about hopefully eventually getting that BCI to work like Yotam was talking about it. So thanks for watching our presentation and have a lovely day. Still recording.
Okay.